Try to learn the Sikha Gimel and Vaeschanan. It's a very long Sikha with a lot of ha'oris. I will try to focus on the Pnim and maybe some of the others while we learn. The Rebbe starts as follows. From the Posik V'asisa ha'yosher v'hatei v'heinei Hashem lernt man up den Din von a Bar Metzra. The Gemara learns from this the Din from a Bar Metzra. What's the Din of a Bar Metzra? As einer verkauft a Feld als Zweiten. Somebody sells his field to somebody else. Hat der Bar Metzra means there was a Feld beschhenes zu dem verkauften Feld. Somebody who has another field close to the field that the first person is selling to the second person. So the third person, the Recht, he has to mesalig sein dem lekeach. The third person, the neighbor, has the right to be mesalig, to push away the one who buys the field from the Mesoda, und is abkaufen versichern to buy the field for himself. Weil, es ist a Teva von Bar Metzra, so haben seine Felder zusammen. It's easier, as the Farshim explained, when he needs to rent somebody, hire somebody to work on the fields. It's cheaper to hire somebody that he plows and works on two fields just together, rather than having somebody coming in two different places to work on his fields. Der Din von Bar Metzra, wie wird gesagt in Gemara und gepasst in den Rambam, is, what's the Din? Als wenn der Lekeach hat schon gekauft im Feld. It's after the Lekeach, the second person bought a field from the Moicher. Und mit Zadvasisa al-Teva ha-Yosher is mit dem Misalik von the Feld. You push away, you take away the Lekeach from the field. Von dem is moving, as the Chiyuv from Vasisa ha-Yosher va-Tev liegt be'ikere von Lekeach. In other words, the din is upon the buyer of the field, that he, wie bald as for him is nicht a zah Unterschied, so kaufen die Feld oder a Feld bemokken machen, makes no difference if he buys this field or a field someplace else. He doesn't have another field right next to the field he's buying now. Mashenkin van Bar Metzra is Yosher v'Toiv as the Mashenkin van Bar Metzra. He has a field right next door to this field. Therefore, it's more sensible for him to have this field. Is Mitzad is Yosher v'Toiv as the Bar Mitzvah. So the Canaan from the field, that the one who is in the Bar Mitzvah, the Shochen, he should buy this field. Also is ich mashma von dem Din in Gemara. Same thing is also understood. The Gemara says a din in Baba Metzia. The Gemara is in Baba Metzia. The Gemara says Zoven la'akum less Baba Meshum din in the Bar Metzvah. But if he sells it to a goy, there's no such din in the Bar Metzvah. Akum la v'atay la ba'asiso yosher ba'teva, because a goy doesn't have this obligation of asiso ba'yosher ba'teva. Das heißt, das ist a din, was sein Chiyuv liegt von Lekeach. Being that the din is on the lekeach, and over here the lekeach is a goy, the Rebbe is a nishmachal, wegen so laken, because a goy is not mechuyev in this mitzvah. Aber sagt der Rebbe weiter in Sibbeis, der Gede von din bar mitzvah, bar metzra, can man mabaya sein auf zwei Fälle. Can be explained in two different ways. One is, das ist nur an ihnen von Anogas Yishoris v'tevis. Das heißt, es fällt gar nicht in dem Teike Vakinien von dem lekeach. The kinyan that the Lekeach bought the field is a full-fledged kinyan. Nor, die Chachamim haben ihm Machayev gewähnt. The Chachamim haben Machayev the Lekeach zu fühlen sich in an Efen von Yosher v'Tei. He should act properly. Und the Rebbe muss das, was König gewähnt, this field that he already bought, abgeben, he has to give it away zu dem Bar Metzra. Und an der selber, die andere Dinnen von der Bar Metzra, that the din applies to the Lekeach. Because it's only a hanhoga teva yosher. Or the Rebbe says the second way that it can be learned is not only is a hanhoga teva a derevil lefnim mishur sadin, it is lefnim mishur sadin, but it's only a din of lefnim mishur sadin. No, das tut this creates as the bar metzra bar kumt a gewisse beilis of the fell. Of this other, that the neighbor, the third person, has already a bias in this field. I give und der Rebbe He does was the Lekeach that abgeben them fell to the Bar Metzra. Why does the Lekeach have to give it to him? Is it's not blois mitzad achiv von an Hogeteva if him. It's not only because it's an Hogeteva and the Lekeach, the one who bought it, the second person. Nor, weil the feld hot a sheiches to the Bar Metzra, it's as if the Bar Metzra has already, as the Lashon and the Mukha Yesef the Rebbe brings down, is ki ilu yeshlik tzas kinyin begufi shel karka. It's as if the Bar Metzra has a certain ownership in this karka, as we'll see a little later, maybe even before the Lekeach bought it. We'll see that a little later. The Rebbe goes on, the Chelek zwischen the Zweifan. What's the difference between the two ways, whether it's only a Hanhogotev or it creates a certain bias to the Bar Metzra? The Rebbe says, Leuten erst neven. At the din the Bar Metzra is a gede von Hanhogeteva. It's only Hanhoge. It does gesagt geworden zum Lekeach. It's a din only an der Lekeach. As darf sich führen mit von Joshua mit Tev und abgeben dem Sode zu der Bar Metzra. Nor Oiber will nicht, is a bezer machliach. In other words, be'etzem it's a din only under lekeach. It's not a din nobody else. If he doesn't want to comply, then Bezdin has the chiyuv to be machliach. That's according to the first way. Leuten zweiten Neufen, and das is a din in kinyan akarka. As you said before, that the Mukha Yesef says that the Bar Metzra has a certain kinyan already in it. Is Akam Azech Do is the Vaeschanan, and who is this Vaeschanan Yoshevatev? Mechubim Tzim Lekeach. He is the one who has to give it away. In other words, the Bar Metzra doesn't have the ability to go and take it away. The Lekeach has to give it to him. Nevertheless, is aber der Zivui unser Kiyum bepoil nogeya euch zum Bezdin. It's also an obligation on the Bezdin, not the way we learned in the first place that be'etzem is a din only on the lekeach, but the Bezdin have a chiyuv just like all dinim. Bezdin have the chiyuv to enforce the dinim. Over here, this has a certain obligation on the Bezdin. B'tzad ha'tzisa v'yoshevatev gibim chachomim dem Bar Metzra. The Chachomim gave the Bar Metzra a tzas kinyan and a gufa soda. They schwachen up the kinyan for the lekeach. In other words, as if to say the lekeach only bought it was kinyan 99.9%, just a little dukman. Or b'meila daf the lekeach himself. Op izay yishlim sich der Rabbi weiter. Und das ist a machlekes zwischen der Rishonim. Und b'miyuchad das mudgish b'chlukadeis v'Rashi v'Rambam. These two ways is actually a machlekes between Rashi and the Rambam and other Rishonim. In dem Tam from Bar Metzra mitzad Vaeschanan Yoshev Atev zok Rashi says in Baba Metzia, and he says as follows: Davar she'i ato nechser kolkach, something that you the lekeach is not losing, because shetimtze karkois b'mokem acher, you can find the same field someplace else. Al ben ametzah, therefore don't be matriach at the Bar Metzra, the neighbor, the third person, lies nechosev chalukim. Therefore, the third person who has a field right next door, will have to go buy someplace else. So his nechosim are divided, and by you, it makes no difference. You don't have a neighbor, a field in the neighborhood. This is what Rashi says. The Rambam is obem vayrdem din, und sein Tam. The Rambam explains, and it says as follows. Yesh l'chavere shuhu b'tzad hamesed shaloi. He's speaking to the Bar Metzra. The chavere, the one who is the Bar Metzra, he has the ability litin damim l'lekeach or l'tzalek eisei to give money to the lekeach and push him away. V'davar zeh b'shum shenemar basis hayoshev atei omra chachomim hoyel v'hamecher echot, meaning it makes no difference if the lekeach will buy it here or someplace else. Therefore, it's Tevi Yosher that the Bar Metzra should buy the field. In other words, it's not a din on the lekeach so much, it's also a din on the Bar Metzra himself. As the Rebbe says in Order 11, the same thing is also a Lashon Harosh. The Rashi says, so in other words, the bar mitzvah should tell the lekeach. Let's say the Rabbi explains in the Pnim. But das Rashi is a Sahan Hogeteva. Konter Rashi, it's only a Han Hogeteva. Was bezieht sich in ganzen zum lekeach. It's totally an obligation on the lekeach. As he says, you, the lekeach, is not lead. But later today, and therefore you don't put a tircha on the Berametz. Everything on the lekeach. Und wie Rashi ist es magdisch weiter in der Suge beim Din von Sovel Akum Labam Barbas. He says Rashi also repeats it. Legabe, when he's talking about why Legabe Agoy, this doesn't apply. Rashi says, Ein lonu lemer al Bar Metzra v'asisa ayoshev ateiv elo l'lekeach. We can't say the din of the din of Bar Metzra only to the lekeach. L'lekeach nema meshech yotcha v'yikachet. The lekeach, it says that you should pull your hand away and this guy should buy. In other words, again, Rashi stresses that it's a din under Bar Metzra. But that's a Rambam, but it is not nur an Hogeteva for lekeach. Lekeach is the Bar Metzra. Not only a din under lekeach for the benefit of the Bar Metzra, as like unter Rashi, it's a din. You don't tell it to the Bar Metzra, you tell it to the lekeach. Nor das wird an Hogeteva bechlal. It becomes an Hogeteva in the world. Amiras chachomim, as a zoy is tevi yosher, being that the chachomim teach durch the posik that this is the tevi yosher, and therefore they apply this posik to Bar Metzra. Yesh lechavere, in other words, we're talking to the Bar Metzra. Amru chachomim, it's an obligation on the chachomim. They said it. Tevi yosheru sheyikne, it's proper that the Bar Metzra should buy it. Says Azach, was is be'etzem tevi yosher. It's not only a hanhoga that applies to the lekeach. It becomes a hanhoga teva be'olam. Und das wird aufgetan mit dem Koyach, was die Chachamim geben dem Bar Metzra as Kinyan in the Gufas, oder? And this becomes like that in the world because the Chachamim gave a certain Kinyan to the Bar Metzra. Therefore, it becomes a Hanoga in the world. Damit es verstandig was der Din, bei dem Din von Sovel Akum, that's why we understand, look, aber the Din of Goy, sagt the Rambam changes the din a little bit how it's said according to Shittas Rashi. Ameichel ha'akum is shamtin oisoi at sheikabel olav kol einis sheyovi min ha'akum at sheyinig ha'akim im ben ha'metzah shle b'dinei Yisrael. In other words, the Rambam says that if a person does sell it to a goy, Besdin is mishamtim oisoi. They put him mishamta because until he accepts upon himself every loss that the goy is going to want to do by taking away the field from him, this lekeach will have to put up the money for it and lose that money. In other words, the Rebbe teaches us, Aleph, it is mash mit dem tam. He takes away the reason what says, v'shet in the Gemara, as akum lav bara v'asisa yoshev atevu, that the goy doesn't have the obligation. That applies only if the din is under lekeach. So if the lekeach is a goy, you say, the guy doesn't have an obligation. Spalter, but the Rambam learns that it's not a din under lekeach, it's a din kloli. So what is the difference if the guy doesn't have this obligation? The yid has an obligation, so the Rambam takes away the din taka. And the Rebbe says in the order 15, the Gemara says akum lav bar v'asisa teva yosher, which means that the din doesn't apply to the guy. So it seems as if, and we brought that as a yichoch at the Shittas Rashi. So the Rebbe says he can explain it according to the Rambam that mekivan de la'akum ein shayich kol inyan mitzvahs, being that he's not shaykh to the mitzvahs. That's the taich akum labam. He's not shaykh to mitzvahs b'chlal. Therefore, the chachamim who will put up this din on the world in this case by a goy, they did not put it on lab. The chachamim didn't create this din of bar mitzvah that it's a din on the whole world when it's like to a goy. That's one thing. Back to the Pnim, the Rebbe says, Beis, it is Mesiv, the Rambam adds on Lashon Gemara, which doesn't say in the Gemara, Achiyinig ha'akum im ben ha'metzah shalei b'dinei Yisrael, that the goy that will have this din with the bar metzah, while Weil der Din von Bar Mitzvah is nicht nur als der Lekeach darf sich führen in an Efen für Yoshev Atayim. No, we have to make sure that the Goy will do the same thing, and you have to try to do whatever you can that the Goy should do it, because it's a Din, not only Legabi the Lekeach, it's a Din also in the world. Just like to explain a little bit over here and say what the Rebbe says in Order 16. The Rebbe says that L'cheire Yeshleimar another nafkamina between the Shittas Rambam and Shittas Rashi. The Rebbe says, being that we've said that the Rebbe says it's Hanhoge, which the Chacham placed in the world, Eba says of the Rebbe that L'das Rambam the Chiyuv v'asisa v'Yoshev Ateiv is Chal kishinasa ze bar metzra. As soon as Reuben owns a field and Levi becomes a bar metzra, even before a second person, a Lekeach, gets into the picture, there's already a din of bar metzra. Eba says of the Rebbe im Kain, Zernegei lahamecher. Shaharei chosed gam ba'abayles hamecher. If you say that the bar metzra, like the Nemuk Yesuf says, gets a tzas kinyan in the field, so even before the mecher even thinks of selling it, even before there's a Lekeach in the picture, the mecher already lost tzas of the bayles. B'meila, this is a din which is negay also to the mecher. Even though din bar metzra v'asisa Yoshev Ateiv leiti l'chachomim ala mecher. It's not that a chachom put it under mecher, because the din be'etzim starts only after a Lekeach buys it. That's when it starts. But when a Lekeach wants to go into the picture and buy it, but al kaponim be'etzem, the din is under mecher as well. The Rambam writes, not like in the Gemara, that the Balabos has to see to convince the Goy to give it back. In other words, this is a din which is chal on the Becher. If there's only a din of an Hogatevil Lekeach, like Rashi. That means this din becomes only after the Lekeach bought it. Ve'in shaychus lamecher, has no connection to the mecher. Kiba furish befirish Rashi, divrei maskal akum, as we learned before, that has no din legabe the Lekeach. Mashenker kunte the Rambam. It's a and legabe the mecher. Mashenker kunte the Rambam. It's a din which is chal already even before Lekeach gets into the picture. It's a din which is chal on the, what do you call it, on the mecher. Or A and the Rebbe brings the Rosh, that the same thing is called the Shittas Rosh, and then the Rebbe concludes the Reilu Kodesiches Chelek Yutches on 29 or 11 Shalamecha Yesh Isur Lefnei Yivin, and over there the Rebbe speaks. It's the famous Sichel of Bar Metzra about the Malachim of Matan Torah. Over the Rebbe says in the Hora that even though the Meicher has no din in Bar Metzra, nevertheless, he has a din of a lefnei yibur. L'cha'ira, just how order b'derech agav, as we try just to focus on the sikha, but very bekitza say something. L'cha'ira kumtois, as is mashma l'cha'ira from the hemshech ha'ora, that this end of this ha'ora, that the moicher has the ease of lefnei yibur, is only according to Shittas Rashi. Masha'inkin according to Shittas Rambam, that we say that the din of Vametzah starts even before there's a Lekeach, and therefore it's a din which is a little connected to the Mecher as well, is that the Mecher does not have only a din of Lefnei Yibur, has actually some kind of a connection in the din of Bar Metzah itself. We have to understand this, because if the Mecher, the whole din, of the Bar Metzah is only but the Chachamim metilu on the Lekeach, as the Rebbe says in the first part of this Order 16, when he's talking about the Shittas Rambam, that the din of Asisa B'Yosher they relate to the Chachamim ala Mecher only on the Lekeach. So what's the connection to the Mecher? So that the connection to the Mecher is that he doesn't have the din, but he has the obligation to see that the Lekeach should do that din. So the din is not chal on him, but being that he has a connection, so he has to do everything which is possible that the Lekeach should do that din. It's not only the Chachomim have the din to force the lekeach. The moichen has to do everything in his power to see that the lekeach should do it. At the end of the day, if he won't be able to be successful, the chachamim have the din. But the din starts from the meichen. Kain yishlema b'derech efshar. I might be 100% wrong, but akaponim kain yishlema. Then in Ha'orah 17, the Rebbe is mavayir based on this chiluk between this Rambam and Rashi, other dinim in the din of Bar Metzra, which falls in with this whole hemshech of how the Rambam learns and how Rashi